I'm 74, and I only do one exercise every day. Yet my body feels stronger, steadier, and more pain-free than it did 20 years ago. What if everything you've been told about aging and exercise is wrong? Most people believe that getting weaker, slower, and more fragile is just part of aging, but that belief is quietly stealing your independence, because the truth is this: your body is not designed to fall apart after 60. It's designed to adapt. And right now, whether you realize it or not, your body is adapting in one of two directions: toward strength or toward decline. There is no middle ground. What shocks many experts is that the decline most people experience isn't caused by age itself. It's caused by inactivity and the wrong kind of movement. Long gym routines, complicated exercises, high-impact workouts. These often do more harm than good for aging joints. But there is one simple movement, done daily, that can change everything. It targets your legs, your core, your balance, and even your confidence, all at once. Because here's the hidden truth no one tells you. The moment your legs weaken, your independence begins to disappear. Walking becomes harder. Standing feels unstable. Even simple tasks like climbing stairs or getting out of a chair start to feel like effort. And this is how the cycle begins. Less movement leads to more weakness, which leads to even less movement. But the cycle can be reversed completely. When you perform the right movement daily, something remarkable happens inside your body. Your muscles wake up. Your joints begin to stabilize. Your brain reconnects with your balance system. And suddenly, things that felt difficult start to feel natural again. This isn't about pushing your limits. It's about restoring what your body was designed to do. The most powerful exercise for this isn't complicated. In fact, its simplicity is what makes it so effective. It mimics a movement you've done your entire life, something so basic yet so essential that losing it is often the first sign of physical decline. And when you train this movement daily, even for just a few minutes, you send a powerful signal to your body. Stay strong, stay capable, stay independent. This is how people in their 70s and 80s continue to move freely, confidently, and without fear. Not because they do more, but because they do what matters consistently. You don't need hours, you don't need equipment, you don't even need to leave your home. What you need is commitment to one simple daily action, because in the end, it's not the intensity of what you do, it's the consistency. And the decision you make today, whether to move or remain still, will determine how you live the next 10, 20, even 30 years of your life, strong or struggling, independent or dependent. The choice is still yours. What most people over 60 have been told about their bodies is not just incomplete, it's dangerously misleading. The common belief is that strength fades naturally with age, that muscles shrink because time has passed, and that weakness is simply something to accept. But that belief quietly accelerates the very decline it claims to explain. Because the body does not weaken simply because you have reached a certain number of years. It weakens because it is no longer being used in the way it was designed to function. Muscle is not lost overnight, and it is not taken away by age alone. It is gradually surrendered through disuse, through long hours of sitting, through avoiding movement that feels slightly uncomfortable, and through the silent habit of doing less each day. The body is always adapting. That is a biological law. If you move less, your body adapts by becoming weaker. If you challenge it, even gently, it adapts by becoming stronger. This process does not stop at 60 or 70 or even 80. It continues for as long as you are alive. What surprises many experts in aging and movement science is how quickly the body can regain strength once it is properly stimulated. Even individuals who have been inactive for years can begin to rebuild muscle and stability within weeks. Not because they are doing something extreme, but because they are finally doing something consistent. The muscles that support your posture, your balance, and your ability to move are not gone. They are simply underused, and underused muscles do exactly what they are designed to do. They conserve energy by shrinking and becoming less active. This is where most people make a critical mistake. They assume that in order to regain strength, they need complicated workouts or intense exercise routines. That belief often leads to frustration or even injury, especially when joints are not prepared for sudden stress. But the truth is far more practical and far more empowering. Strength after 60 is rebuilt through correct, repeated use of fundamental movements, the kind of movements your body recognizes, the kind that activate multiple muscle groups at once, the kind that restore function rather than just create fatigue. When you begin to use your muscles properly again, even in small amounts, your body responds immediately. Blood flow improves, nerve connections strengthen, stability begins to return. This is not guesswork. This is how the human body is built to survive and adapt. What you are experiencing as aging is often just the result of long-term underuse, not an irreversible condition. There is also a deeper consequence that many overlook. Loss of strength is not just about muscles. It directly affects your confidence, your balance, and your willingness to move. When your body feels unstable, your brain becomes cautious. You begin to avoid certain movements, certain activities, even certain environments, and this creates a cycle where reduced movement leads to further weakness, and further weakness leads to even less movement. Breaking that cycle does not require extraordinary effort. It requires deliberate action. It requires understanding that every time you choose to move your body correctly, you are sending a signal that says, maintain this, strengthen this, keep this alive. And your body listens. The idea that weakness is an unavoidable part of aging has caused too many people to give up control over their physical future. But the reality is far more hopeful and far more demanding. Your strength is still within your control, not entirely, but significantly. And the difference between decline and resilience often comes down to one simple factor: whether you continue to use your muscles with purpose. Because the body never stops adapting. The only question is, what are you training it to become? Most people are conditioned to believe that improving strength, balance, and joint health requires complexity, multiple exercises, long routines, and structured programs that feel overwhelming before they even begin. That belief is one of the biggest barriers to consistent movement after 60. Because when something feels complicated, it becomes easier to delay, to skip, or to abandon entirely, and inconsistency is what quietly erodes physical capability over time. What is often overlooked is that the human body does not respond to complexity. It responds to stimulus, clear, repeated, and purposeful stimulus. One well-chosen movement, performed consistently, can activate more muscles, improve coordination, and restore stability more effectively than a scattered routine filled with disconnected exercises. This is not about doing less for the sake of convenience. It is about doing what matters most, with precision and repetition. There is a specific type of movement that stands above the rest in its ability to deliver these results. It is simple, familiar, and deeply functional. It engages the legs, which are the foundation of mobility. It recruits the core, which stabilizes the spine and protects the body from falls. It challenges balance, which is essential for confidence in everyday activities. And it does all of this in a way that mirrors real-life motion, not artificial patterns that the body does not recognize outside of exercise. When this kind of movement is performed daily, even for a short duration, it begins to retrain the body at multiple levels. Muscles are activated in coordination rather than isolation. The nervous system becomes more efficient at sending signals between the brain and the body. Joints are gently loaded in a way that encourages strength without unnecessary strain. Over time, these small daily repetitions create measurable improvements in stability, endurance, and control. The real power lies in consistency. A single movement repeated every day builds a habit that is far more sustainable than an elaborate routine attempted once or twice a week. The body thrives on repetition. It learns through patterns. And when you reinforce the same beneficial pattern daily, you accelerate adaptation in a way that sporadic effort never can. This approach also reduces the risk of injury, which is a major concern for many older adults. Complex routines often introduce movements that the body is not prepared for, especially when flexibility and joint stability have declined. In contrast, a simple, controlled movement allows you to focus on proper form, gradual progression, and awareness of how your body feels. This creates a safer environment for rebuilding strength, particularly in areas that are most vulnerable, such as the knees, hips, and lower back. Another critical advantage is confidence. When you master one movement and begin to feel its benefits, you develop trust in your body again. That trust changes how you move throughout the day. You walk with more stability, you stand with more control, you approach stairs, chairs, and uneven surfaces with less hesitation. These are not small improvements. They directly influence your independence and your quality of life. What makes this even more powerful is that it does not require special equipment, a specific location, or a large investment of time. It can be done at home, at your own pace, with full control over intensity. This removes nearly every barrier that typically prevents people from staying consistent. And when barriers are removed, adherence improves. When adherence improves, results follow. The idea that you need more exercises to achieve better results has led many people in the wrong direction. In reality, the body benefits most from focused, repeated, and functional movement. One exercise done correctly and consistently can deliver a level of transformation that scattered effort never will. Because in the end, the body does not reward how much you know about exercise. It responds to what you do, how often you do it, and how effectively you engage it. And one simple movement, practiced daily with intention, is enough to begin changing the trajectory of how your body feels and functions. Most people spend years fearing disease, focusing on medications, test results, and diagnoses, believing that these are the greatest threats to their future. Yet the most immediate and life-altering risk after 60 is often overlooked because it does not appear suddenly or dramatically. It develops quietly, almost invisibly, until one day its impact becomes undeniable. That threat is the gradual loss of mobility. Mobility is the foundation of independence. It is the ability to stand, to walk, to turn, to reach, to react without hesitation. When mobility begins to decline, everything else follows. Simple actions that once required no thought start to demand effort and caution. Getting out of a chair becomes slower. Climbing stairs becomes a challenge. Walking across a room no longer feels automatic. These are not isolated inconveniences. They are early warning signals. What makes this decline so dangerous is how subtly it begins. It does not announce itself with pain or injury in most cases. Instead, it starts with small adjustments. You take fewer steps. You avoid certain movements. You sit down more often. You rely on support without realizing how frequently you are doing it. These small changes accumulate, and over time they reshape how your body functions. As mobility decreases, muscle strength follows. The legs, which are responsible for carrying your body weight and maintaining balance, begin to weaken. The core loses its ability to stabilize the spine effectively. Coordination between the brain and the body becomes less precise. This is not a sudden breakdown. It is a gradual disconnection that continues as long as movement is reduced. At the same time, balance begins to deteriorate. Balance is not a single ability. It is a complex system involving muscles, joints, vision, and the nervous system. When you stop challenging that system, it becomes less responsive. Reaction times slow down. The body struggles to correct itself when it is slightly off-center. This is when the risk of falls increases. Falls are not random events. They are often the result of declining mobility combined with reduced strength and delayed reaction. And once a fall occurs, the consequences can be severe. Recovery becomes more difficult with age. Confidence is shaken. Movement is reduced even further out of fear. This creates a cycle that accelerates physical decline at a much faster rate. What many fail to recognize is that loss of mobility does not just affect the body, it affects the mind. When movement becomes uncertain, independence begins to feel fragile. You may start avoiding activities you once enjoyed. Social interactions may decrease. The world begins to feel smaller, not because it has changed, but because your ability to navigate it has been compromised. This is why mobility must be treated as a priority, not an afterthought. It is not something to address once it is lost. It must be protected and reinforced daily. The body is designed to maintain movement as long as it is used. When you stop moving in a purposeful way, the systems that support mobility begin to shut down. The critical point is this: mobility loss is not an unavoidable outcome of aging. It is a process that can be slowed, halted, and in many cases reversed, but only if it is addressed early and consistently. Waiting until movement becomes difficult makes the path back much harder. Every step you take, every time you stand, every controlled movement you perform is an investment in maintaining that ability. The body responds to demand. If you demand stability, it will work to provide it. If you demand strength, it will adapt to support it. But if there is no demand, there is no reason for the body to maintain those functions. The greatest risk is not what happens suddenly, it is what happens slowly, without resistance. And mobility, once lost, is far more difficult to regain than it is to preserve through consistent, intentional movement. There is a deeply ingrained belief that only intense effort produces meaningful results. Many people assume that unless an exercise feels difficult, exhausting, or time-consuming, it cannot be effective. This mindset often leads to a cycle of inconsistency, periods of overexertion followed by long stretches of inactivity. And for individuals over 60, this pattern is not just ineffective, it is counterproductive. The body does not measure progress by how hard you push it in a single session. It measures progress by how often you stimulate it over time. Short, low-impact exercises performed daily provide a steady and reliable signal that the body can respond to. This consistency allows the muscles, joints, and nervous system to adapt gradually without being overwhelmed. High-intensity workouts may seem appealing because they promise faster results, but they also place significant stress on joints that may already be sensitive or compromised. Knees, hips, and the lower back are particularly vulnerable. When these areas are pushed too hard, too quickly, the result is often discomfort or injury. And once pain is introduced, movement is reduced, sometimes drastically. What was intended to improve health ends up limiting it. In contrast, low-impact movements work with the body rather than against it. They respect the current condition of the joints while still providing enough resistance to stimulate muscle engagement. This approach reduces the risk of strain while maintaining the integrity of the body's structure. It creates an environment where progress is not only possible but sustainable. Scientific understanding of aging and physical adaptation continues to reinforce this principle. The body responds best to regular, moderate input rather than sporadic extremes. Muscles strengthen when they are activated consistently. Joints become more stable when they are moved through controlled ranges of motion on a daily basis. The nervous system becomes more efficient when it repeatedly practices the same functional patterns. Another important factor is recovery. As the body ages, recovery time increases. Intense workouts require longer periods of rest, which can reduce overall frequency of movement. Low-impact exercises, on the other hand, can often be performed daily because they do not exhaust the body in the same way. This allows for a higher total volume of effective movement over the course of a week, even if each individual session is short. Consistency also builds confidence. When an exercise feels manageable, it becomes easier to repeat. When it becomes a daily habit, it no longer requires motivation in the same way. It becomes part of a routine, something that is expected rather than debated. This shift is critical because long-term results are not achieved through occasional bursts of effort. They are built through repeated actions that become automatic over time. There is also a psychological advantage to this approach. Short, achievable exercises reduce the mental barrier to starting. They remove the sense of overwhelm that often comes with longer routines. This makes it easier to maintain momentum. And once momentum is established, it becomes a powerful force that supports ongoing improvement. It is important to understand that low impact does not mean low effectiveness. When performed correctly, these movements can activate multiple muscle groups, improve circulation, and enhance coordination. They may not feel extreme, but their impact accumulates. Day by day, repetition by repetition, the body becomes stronger, more stable, and more responsive. The idea that intensity is the key to progress has led many people to overlook the value of consistency. But the body does not reward intensity alone. It rewards frequency, precision, and repetition. A short, focused effort performed every day can produce far greater results than a demanding routine performed occasionally. What determines your physical future is not how hard you work in a single moment. It is how consistently you engage your body over time. And in that equation, simple, low-impact exercises performed daily hold far more power than most people realize. One of the most overlooked truths about aging is that the human body remains highly adaptable far longer than most people believe. There is a persistent assumption that after a certain age, improvement slows to the point of being negligible. That assumption is incorrect, and more importantly, it is harmful. Because it leads to unnecessary limitation, reduced effort, and gradual acceptance of decline that is not biologically required. The body does not suddenly lose its ability to respond to movement at 60, 70, or even 80. What changes is the frequency and quality of stimulation it receives. When movement becomes less frequent, the body conserves energy by reducing muscle activation, joint flexibility, and neuromuscular efficiency. These changes are often mistaken for irreversible aging, when in reality they are adaptive responses to reduced demand. What is most remarkable is how quickly the body can respond when that demand is reintroduced correctly. Even after long periods of inactivity, muscles begin to re-engage when they are consistently activated. Not through extreme effort, but through repeated, controlled movement that signals the body to maintain function. This responsiveness does not disappear with age. It remains present as long as the system is given reason to activate. The nervous system plays a critical role in this process. Movement is not just physical, it is neurological. Every action you perform is the result of communication between the brain and the muscles. When movement is reduced, those neural pathways become less efficient. Reaction times slow, coordination becomes less precise. But when movement is restored consistently, those pathways begin to strengthen again. The connection improves, the body becomes more responsive. This adaptability extends beyond strength alone. It includes balance, posture, and confidence in movement. When the body feels stable, the mind becomes more willing to engage in activity. When instability is present, hesitation increases. This hesitation leads to further inactivity, which reinforces the very weakness it is trying to avoid. Breaking this cycle requires consistent stimulation, not occasional effort. It is also important to recognize that adaptability is not uniform across all activities. The body responds best to functional movement, actions that resemble everyday tasks. Standing, sitting, stepping, shifting weight, and maintaining balance are all fundamental patterns that the body recognizes. When these patterns are practiced regularly, the body reinforces the systems required for independence. There is a misconception that adaptation requires intensity. In reality, adaptation requires consistency. The body does not measure improvement by strain or exhaustion. It measures improvement by repetition and frequency. A moderate movement performed daily sends a stronger signal for adaptation than a strenuous movement performed occasionally. This is because the body prioritizes what is repeated over what is rare. Another critical aspect of adaptability is recovery capacity. While recovery may take longer with age, it is still highly efficient when stress is appropriate. Low to moderate movement allows the body to recover quickly, making daily practice possible. This creates a continuous cycle of stimulation and recovery that supports gradual improvement without overload. The psychological dimension of adaptability should not be ignored. When individuals experience improvement, even small improvements, it reinforces continued effort. This creates a feedback loop where movement leads to better function, and better function leads to more willingness to move. Over time, this loop becomes self-sustaining. What often prevents people from experiencing this adaptability is not physical limitation, but expectation. When someone believes improvement is no longer possible, they stop engaging in the very behaviors that would produce improvement. The body then follows that expectation by reducing function further. This is not a fixed outcome. It is a response to reduced demand. The reality is that the human body continues to adapt throughout life. It does not require perfection. It requires persistence. Even minimal but consistent movement can trigger meaningful change over time. The key is not intensity, but continuity. Understanding this shifts the entire perspective on aging. Instead of viewing it as a period of inevitable decline, it becomes a phase where maintenance and improvement are still possible through deliberate action. The body remains responsive, capable, and willing to adapt as long as it is given the opportunity to do so repeatedly and consistently.